We're going to take the winter off and get the price.
How are you?
I turned it on.
I'm ready to
I just turned it on.
Oh, you did?
The teacher, I figured
It's too much.
How are you?
Oh, that, I'm good.
Well, that's good. It's still under control. Just see if there's any more dead cats.
Okay, it's 7 o'clock. Welcome, August 2024 Planning Board meeting, Newfields, New Hampshire. I'm Bill Mazzaro, Chairman. Down my end is Mike Sedunu, Select Board Rep, Mike Price, Jeff Kingstra, Jeff Kuchar, and Sean McGowan. Sean's an alternate, but he's in tonight because we have a couple of members missing. Down the end is Glenn Greenwood, the planner, and no taker extraordinaire Sue. We've got three things and then on the agenda, and then we have some administrative stuff, notes and stuff the board's got to do. First thing is renaming Lila Lane, then we're going to hear the continuance of 70 Route 108, and then we're going to review, design review the Brock property. So the first thing is Lila Lane, and I know Select Board Member Harmon has been working on this. Go ahead.
All right, you should have a copy of the handout I gave you, which gives you full background.
Wait, hold on. Don't we have to vote this into a public hearing? I mean,
Yeah.
this is not part of our formal meeting. This is actually a public hearing.
Do we open up the public hearing?
Yes,
After he presents or no? Okay, let's just make a motion. Somebody make
Yeah, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing. And we might as well move this along unless anybody on the board has anything consequential. All right.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There you go.
Fire away.
All right, so you should have a package of all background information on that. This goes back to 12 June of this year where we had a propane tank hit. And there was great confusion around the Lane Lily Drive. And the synopsis is pretty much there on the front page. Chief Young was involved in this as the police department. And there was confusion about where exactly this was. All right. They got it sorted out, they solved the problem. Little background on it, as I work my way through this, Lily Lane was created in 2017 and Lila Drive was in March of 22. We have not accepted the road yet on Lila Drive, we expect to do that in September of this year, according to Brian. I talked to Mark Kelser, who's in charge of dispatch up in Newmarket. He had a real issue with the similarity of the names and said, hey, he didn't know about it before the names became in place, he would have proposed it. And then I had multiple conversations with Mike Kelleher, who's up at the Department of Safety up in Concord. He explained the situation, and he was 100% supportive of changing the name if that's what we as a select board decided to do and go into the public hearing process. I've included in there the RSAs that are applicable for street name and minor changes and address changes. And there's also a court ruling summation in there of Swansea when they failed to act. They didn't change some names that were very similar. They had a house burned down, and of course, the town got sued and lost for not meeting their responsibility. There was no sovereign discretionary immunity for responsibilities and obligations. Chief went out and spoke to all the residents out there. All the residents are supportive of changing the name. After we talked to them, they filled out some forms. We have 3 of them in the package out of 5 residences out there. Chief representative, we talked to everybody, they were going to go with the name change. They came up with the name of Autumn Lane, which is what they all agreed upon, so that's their recommendation. And you can see the folks that are supporting the name page on the last page there who are in favor of this. This is one of those things, if we did not do it, it's my opinion that we're setting ourselves up for all the holes in the Swiss cheese to line up. And for example, on this one with Jeff, I think you were there, when you guys called the propane company, they went to the wrong address, they went to the wrong road. So you say, well, what are the odds of this happening? They're very small, but this is the kind of thing you don't play. You mitigate the threat, you start with, and solve the problem. So that's pretty much the problem. We had it on the select board back in, on the 23rd last month, and we supported it and moved it to public hearing. Any questions? Any other?
You guys good? Okay, anybody in the public have any comments? Yes, you got, with everybody, you gotta give your name and your address, okay?
My name is Caitlin Smelia, and I live at 12 Lila Drive.
Soon to be Autumn.
We were at the, yes, we had the propane tank question, and we're so thankful for all of the first responders that came to our home. We were in California when it happened, so it was definitely scary to see pictures of when it was literally coming up to the ground next to our house. I was concerned when I found out that multiple people went to the wrong address. I have a 15-month-old at home, and I think we were really lucky this time, but I want first responders to be able to know where they're going and get there when there's an emergency.
Good. Anybody else? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and then we vote. Is that-
I'll make a motion to change the name of Lila Drive to Autumn Lane.
Lila Lane.
Lila Lane. Lila Drive
Lila Drive.
to Autumn Lane.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good. Okay, thanks. Glad everything worked out. Item 2 is site plan modification. This is a continued hearing. 70 Route 108, map 201, lot 17, Dan Pasternak. A site plan modification submitted by owners of map 201, lot 17, located at 70 Route 108 in the commercial district. The applicant proposed to enlarge parking lot, add ice cream shed, and bar shed, and add impervious tent pad. We've had, I think this is the 3rd meeting with Dan. We were left with addressing the parking lot and stormwater. And at the last meeting, the board approved reopening the restaurant because it was not a change of use. So this is just to address kind of like what's on the right side up there. So do you guys want to fire away?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Christian Smith, engineer with Beals Associates, representing the applicant on this one. Dan and Jake Pasternak are both with us here in the audience tonight. So as you mentioned, the last meeting, the project was sent out to Rockingham County Conservation District for engineering review. We received a letter from Jerry Lang, the professional engineer over there, went through, addressed his comments, which largely resulted in the major change in this entire thing after going through Jerry's commentary was he wanted this, I forgot that was a touch screen, I apologize. He wanted this tent area modeled as an impervious surface as though it was going to rain when the tent was there, which was perfectly fine. And the only thing that resulted from that was the addition of a small infiltration swale off to that side of it, which we did design. Jerry has reviewed all of our modifications, our revised drainage calculations, and provided a letter of sign off, which I assume you all have. Specific to the parking lot, the expansion of the parking lot, that's all taken through the pond that had been designed prior. Jerry didn't have any real issue with that. And I can just give you a brief on the Department of Transportation. After 3 months, we are still pending a permit. We have provided that with our drainage analysis. That was at least a month ago. I think that was with the original one, because they don't really care what's not traveling in their right away. But there was a gentleman who was the district's assistant engineer who has recently retired. The project was then given to another man at District 6, and he has been on vacation capacity. So unfortunately, we're still in a holding pattern with DOT. But quite frankly, I mean, from the commentary and the initial reviews and conversations we've had with DOT, they have not requested anything. The only thing I could see them potentially requesting is possibly a deceleration lane along Route 108. But again, we don't know that, we haven't heard that. But, you know, customarily, and Glenn, I think we can back me up on this, state permits are a pretty customary condition of approval, but in any event, with that, I'll sit down and shut up and answer any questions you guys have.
Thanks. So I'm going to open it up to public hearing after the board discusses this. So anybody got any, Mr. Price?
As far as the tent site, how did that change again?
It was simply in the drainage analysis, Mr. Price. We had just modeled it as grass,
Right.
and he said, no, you need to model that as a roof. So that's exactly what we did. So that area is modeled as roof, and the whole thing is now sloped to drain to that infiltration swale along the right-hand side.
But the surface will remain grass.
Grass or something pervious. I mean, now that it's modeled as impervious, it really doesn't matter because we've done the drainage calculations and created a stormwater capture and treatment facility that can handle that. You know, I think that the field turf, the grass is fine. There's a possibility that there could be kind of a rubberized paper, but those are pervious as well. Those actually have gaps between them with the stone fill. But yeah, it is almost definitely not going to be a pervious surface such as pavement or concrete. That type of thing.
So at what point, when a change is made, would they need to come back and address that with the board?
I don't think that.
As long as it's
He's
As long as they're-
made it for the most unrealistic,
Right.
and the toughest, that's impervious.
Could they pave it?
That would be impervious.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else?
But they really do not intend to.
Glenn, do you have any comments on this, or?
I had comments, but they really just involve getting the sign-off letter and getting feedback from DOT. And coming to some kind of conclusion about the discussion that we had about any overflow parking
Yeah.
on the abutting town roadway. Because I think we offered to the applicant that they should talk with the police chief. And so if there's some resolution from that, we should hear that at this meeting.
Well, I'll pick up on that because from the very beginning, I've been pretty adamant here that we're not going to have parking on New Road. And that was understood at the first meetings. I assume it's still understood. Obviously, there's no parking on waterways. So, again, given the numbers here, I think the real question becomes, are we comfortable that there's enough parking associated on the property to address its uses? Because there will not be parking and overflow onto those roads.
Well, again, if I say, I'm assuming you're not referring to the restaurant, you're referring to an event that might happen on the place.
I'm talking about anything that occurs on this property,
Yeah,
parking on that road, they're gonna get towed.
right, that's fine. I mean, it's only enough parking, it's not parking. People go, it's like I have now, like, if they're full, we have to go somewhere else, you know, so. it is what it
Understood.
is.
But our job here is to ensure that whoever's putting in a commercial facility is putting enough parking in that satisfies the town's requirements. And that's why I'm saying, I think we need to think about this, because in terms of the numbers here, is it enough? Is there enough, do we think there's enough parking here if there are gonna be several hundred people there in events? Now, they've talked about they're gonna be doing mostly busing.
Correct.
If that's the case, and I think that, we talked about this before, do we think that's good enough or not?
So-
I think we as a board, though, need to make sure that we're comfortable with this.
Mike, just so, if I may add, also, in a lot of our contracts, when we make contracts with private parties and so forth, it's stipulated we have enough parking for X amount of spaces. Anything above that is your responsibility, you're gonna try to do whatever from the hotel or whatever. And in addition to that, we're looking into ourselves providing some type of busing or trolley service to accommodate, because obviously, it's better for us if we can get more people in there, but again, it will be pre-stated, look, you have 40 spaces, right, a party, whatever, anything above that, you're responsible for getting your party there.
Anybody else got any comments or? Yeah, I've got a comment. So I went down, I looked at New Road, okay, and I went down, I walked New Road, I drove my car down there, and, there's plenty of parking on New Road. You can basically pull a car off and park on New Road and not be in the road, okay? Now, we don't have an RSA right now for no parking on New Road. We've never had one down there. So, I feel, and I talked to the chief about this, if we've ever had a problem down there with parking. And, and I talked to a couple of the other officers, and they all said no, okay? So, as far as overflow parking on New Road, I feel that he should be allowed to do that. That's just my opinion. Now, I know Michael's got his opinion, but I've gone in, I've looked at the road, it's very, very wide. We don't have an RSA, so I guarantee you, people will be parking on that road.
No, our town ordinances don't allow any parking where the car touches the pavement.
Like I said, they can pull off the pavement there. There's plenty of room.
I understand, but there are a variety of restrictions right now with respect to parking. It's very questionable whether you can do it on that road.
Yeah, well,
And put it this way, we are set, in my opinion, and I've said this at every meeting, Jeff, allowing commercial establishments to park on public roadways is a horrible precedent for us to accept. Horrible. We're going to get it on, the questions about it on Garvey, we're going to get it on any commercial establishment around. I think we should not basically acquiesce and say, in this case, we'll allow it. I don't think that is a very wise choice in terms of the town. That's my opinion of it.
yeah, I get it. People have been parking there for 50 years now, so it's, we're gonna have to come up with an RSA and say, look, you can't park there.
But that was just for the restaurant. You're now talking about events with 200 people.
Oh, yes.
And what's going to happen, and this is what I said at the
I
other
agree.
meeting. You're going to have half a dozen cars
Yes.
parking there legally, maybe. Perhaps they're going to be legally, they're
Right.
going to be off the road. The seventh guy's going to come, and he's going to wedge his car in, hanging onto the road. Then somebody's going to come in and parallel park in because there's no other parking. Right? Go anywhere where there's overflow parking, people start to make up their own rules about where they can and cannot park because there's half a dozen cars on the road. I can find a spot here. That's why you don't allow parking on them. And again, where the restaurant was and they had three extra cars on the road, this is an entirely different beast here with 200 people coming to events.
I agree, with the venue on the other side, yes, I totally agree.
If you're going to allow parking on New Road, then I think you should require them to have more than enough parking to prevent that from being a likelihood.
Sure. Yeah, I think they're planning for that.
And what I'm saying is, there's not enough parking here for 200 people. Their plan is to basically bust it. But as well as I do, people are going to drive if they want to drive. And my point about the New Road is, if you're going to have events here with 200 people, there's no way we should be allowing parking on New Road because it will turn into a mess at some point or another.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you, but I just don't want to create a problem when there's no problem right now. That's basically what I'm thinking.
I think we're opening up a door to a problem if we allow parking on New Road.
But it seems we already do allow parking.
Again, we've allowed parking on New Road for the restaurant itself,
No.
not for this.
No, I understand, but it sounds like if there is overflow because the guy's late and misses the shuttle, he can park on the New Road as long as he's off the pavement. I agree with both of you. I think the problem is, if this new road becomes a nightmare, which it very well could, now all of a sudden the guy can't operate a business because he's counting on those spaces. Just like your
No, he's not counting on the spaces at all.
No, but I think he should not be counting on those spaces on New Road at all.
I agree.
Um,
And I think that's why at the prior meetings, we requested they go talk to chief and put up no parking signs, so it is clear he's not relying on those spots on New Road and the potential problem that that might entail.
I don't know how you can, and the chief can answer this maybe if he wants to chime in, but I don't know how you can put a new parking sign if you're allowed to park there. I mean,
This is,
We have, what do we have to, this has to be no parking, or does the ordinance say they can't park off the pavement?
Any part of the pavement. However, just like prior to me taking over as chief, I believe the selectmen in the state have put up signs in the past in certain areas on Connor regarding some parking issues down there, as well as the state for the rail trail. So it can be done. You have to properly sign it. So when you say no parking in between signs, that means no parking even off the road on the side of the pavement. You know, that being said, we haven't had very bad winters here. If you do have a storm, the side of the roads are going to be, snowbanks. So we have to plan accordingly with that. So this is a 12-month operation, at least for the restaurant. I assume they're not having functions, in the wintertime, so it may not be an issue in the wintertime. However, the current town ordinance, how it reads, is no parking on any paved section of the road.
So Dan, have you talked to storage people?
Not directly.
Because that was always 10 spaces right there at the,
Indirectly, they granted us 10 spaces, but,
and then they talked about down where they park the trailers and all that.
yeah,
stuff.
we were just talking about right across the street. And Frank, if I would too, I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate that. My vision is that if that ever came to overflow parking, it would not be events, it would only be for the restaurant, which as it was before. Events, again, it's totally different. I don't see it. To be honest, we're not even looking at that. That's a year down the road. We're trying to get something going, but we didn't envision that for events, more for overflow parking for the restaurant.
and I understand that, but at the same time, you have an event with 200 people, they're gonna park there if they think they can park there.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. And I think we're foolish to think that, people are only gonna park there when they're going to the restaurant. That's, again, with the numbers now that you're talking about going to that property, I don't think that is a realistic assumption or one that we should operate with.
Yeah, and again, I don't know what's going to happen, but another thing we've discussing with users at the restaurant, because we've had user events, is having on-site either valet people to direct people as well, which would obviously help as well.
So it sounds like you feel you're more in control of the event parking.
Well, we reach out, so we work with the clients for weeks before they happen, especially a 200-person event, which might happen once a year. I don't know last time you went to a wedding with 200 people, which is not that common anymore. Most of them are between 50 and 100. So when we're reaching out and discussing the event with them for weeks ahead of time, what was the menu, seeing the venue, things like that, you let them know, when you send out your invitations, you need, this will be the shuttle. People stay in hotels to come to weddings, they don't, 9%. They get a hotel block, they take a shuttle to the wedding, that would work. It's very common to use public transportation.
Yeah, I think that's established ahead of time for the guests, because again, okay, this is where you're staying, this is how you're getting here, this is how it works. Like Jake said, to excite the building, divide the party on site and establish on the ground plans. And again, a big event like that, you'll have people on site directing people, you can't park here, whatever.
It sounds to me like if it doesn't work, then you gotta do something. But I think Jeff, what was you saying, if it's not a problem, why make it a problem? And if it becomes a problem, well, then yeah.
We don't want a problem either, we don't have to back on each other, hit people, or.
That's
Yeah, something.
Okay. So we're waiting for DOT, which we might be waiting for a while, so
I mean, a conditional approval pending a state permit is a really common condition of approval.
Yes. Any other, so is there any questions from the public or discussion or anything?
Hi, my name is Sylvia. I live on New Road and I'm also in Butter. Going down New Road when the place was the ship to shore, I lived there my basically 30 or something years. And when it was ship to shore and Fire and Spice, there was always an issue of parking there. When you pull in off of 108, you'll often have some person that can't find a spot, so they stop right in the middle of New Road. And when you're coming off of 108, I've almost crashed myself. So that's a very bad situation right there, and you always have people on both sides of the road, and you've got traffic going down the center of the street because they can't get through because there's cars on both sides. So Mr. Sunino's point was correct. It's going to be a nightmare, and I can't even imagine. I mean, I've never gone to a wedding where I said, sure, bring me there, and I'll hope I'm ready, when I'm ready to go, you're going to bus me back. There's no public transportation from the hotels in Exeter to the New Market or New Fields area. So I think you guys are killing yourselves, thinking this isn't going to be a problem.
It's not public
I think
transportation.
someone's going to wind up getting killed right there. I'm just telling you right now. I want to be on the record.
Yeah, it's not public transportation, it's buses that are provided by a company that do this all the time. And then obviously, we can't control how people drive. I mean, no matter what business you have there, some people drive 4 lanes.
But that's the point I'm making. You guys cannot control whether people show up there in large numbers or not. I know you gotta make the effort, and I'm appreciative of that. The problem that we face, though, is people are going to do what people do. And what they do is, they'll drive. And they'll look for parking. They're not gonna park half a mile away back here in town to go there. They're gonna try to jam their car somewhere on New Road. It's going to happen, it'll happen in large numbers, and there will be problems. I don't understand, I get your point, well, it's not a problem until it's a problem. I don't understand why we're kicking the can on this. It's real simple. We make a condition of this, that no parking is allowed, and they need to sign, no parking is allowed on New Road. And we're done with it.
Well, I think Jeff's point was, I guess that's up to the select board to decide. We don't decide if there's no parking.
Or we can make a condition of approval that they go to the select board and discuss the parking.
Good. That seems reasonable.
Yeah, and I think, you need to.
And that they're going to acquiesce to what the board determines is appropriate.
And I think you need, the police chief there, and, maybe the fire chief, just so they can chime in as well.
May I ask, was it a problem with the prior restaurant? I don't know if I wasn't here.
No, it was only a restaurant. It was a restaurant that seated, 30, 40 people. You guys are talking about events with
But I'm talking about
hundreds
the
of
restaurant.
people.
Remember, we're talking about the restaurant.
You're not, though. When you do an event here, are you saying that nobody who's attending this event will consider parking on New Road? Of course they will. So, come on. Let's not.
You haven't done this before? I don't think we've done this before. We've done it, and we know what we're doing.
I'm not saying you don't know what you're doing, but are you saying that nobody's going to show up to your
If
event
they're out there
and end up parking on
If
New
we have
Road?
an employee, if we have somebody out there enforcing and saying, no, you can't park here, you told them, yes.
Then why won't you just put up signs that say no parking?
Because you're talking about 200 people event, which again, may not happen. We're talking about the restaurant, right? Two different things over here. Little 40, 50 seats, we may need a couple extra cars over there. That's like the prior restaurants have had.
But again, you have expanded parking on the other side of your facility now. That shouldn't be a problem with the restaurant.
Yeah, we're waiting on DOT approval, so.
Understood. But if you get approval for this, then there should be no demand for parking on New Road for the restaurant because you have, I don't know, how many additional spots on the right-hand side now? 15?
Like 23.
Well, a total of 23, yeah, I forget what was there prior. But yes, absolutely.
You're expanding your parking, there should be no need for restaurant parking now on New Road, given that you have expanded parking on the right-hand side.
I think also in the event that conditional approval doesn't come through, you'll be back and we can have an opportunity to discuss whether or not there's merit in parking on New Road or not, and no real reason to come to a conclusion. If it's really about the restaurant, you have enough parking, as long as you approve from the state, get that approval, and it's be a separate issue. If you don't get the approval, we reopen this dialogue, but
Yeah, we're
the points
fully
are
anticipating.
at this point.
Yeah, because, the only thing we heard from DOT was, let's look at site distance, let's look at the drainage calculations. We've provided all that to them, they seem perfectly happy with it, so it's just a matter of, now that we've had the change of employees over there, waiting until somebody's actually back on the route. But, yeah.
Any more, Mike?
A quick question. You talked about they were thinking about doing an access lane on the right side.
I said that's probably the only thing that they could possibly come up with.
Have they talked about no right-hand turn coming out of the parking lot? And I'm not advocating or
No
not.
left-hand turn, you mean?
No, coming out of the parking lot. Oh, yeah, no left-hand turn. Sorry, yes. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just curious if they.
Yeah, I have not heard that
Okay.
from DOT yet, Michael, but,
Okay.
obviously, if that's what they mandate, that's how we will operate.
I mean, as everyone in this room knows, the whole 108 strip and the access issues, Irving Station, and everything else are creating
Well, I'm
headaches.
telling you, it's not
Well, 108, the District 6 is dealing with a variety of issues there. I didn't know if they may have.
That has not come up yet.
Okay, thank you.
Just to make it clear to the public, the planning board does not do anything with the highway.
No.
And where the Irving Station is, we have nothing to do with that. I'm waiting for the first person to hit those other things. I would say that flip around. Any other comments from the public, questions?
I'm just thinking about having seen many cars on the side of New Road, on the restaurant in the past, and using that road myself on a bicycle, and having met many other people who ride that road on a bicycle. I dislike the idea of being squeezed between traffic and parked cars. That's my comment.
Anybody else?
Could we just park on one side of the road and not on both sides? And when you don't want parking, just put no parking sign. Leave them there permanently.
I think that's a discussion with the select board when they talk with the chief to talk about parking. That's a good point, though. Anybody else? We'll close the public hearing and.
Just got a quick question. Has he made any inquiries as a remedy to maybe do like a valley parking, the Rockingham Ballroom parking area across the street?
He said that, yeah. They'll look into that.
Yeah, Rockingham Ballroom and the golf course as well, so.
If you have overflow, you have valet parking service, and there's your.
For sure, it's definitely an option.
By the way, along those lines, have you talked to Levante about Strata Tire that it's closed? And, I mean, obviously, if it's constructed, it abuts your property, right? I mean, putting a path down to Levante parking, you guys have 30 parking spots right there.
I think we have a representative. from
Yeah, no, that's not gonna happen.
Oh, okay.
The first meeting we had about this, that was the issue, because everyone's gonna drive onto our property, and everyone probably wants to have that restaurant back, and Muddy River, great. I love going to Market Square for that, and I'm all about everybody doing the best they can with their property and not hindering it. 200 people in a wedding venue is a big problem there, and I'm already seeing putting up signs and having headaches and having drunk people fall and sue me for nothing. So it's, the restaurant, yeah, I'm all for that. I would visit it all the time, but the wedding thing and the ice cream shack, and when everyone goes down 108 a million miles an hour, they slam their brakes on. How many accidents happen at the end of New Road? It's crazy. And one side of the street may be on New Road, but two sides? No. And there are tons of bicycle people that go up and down that street. And my other thought to my sister was, if somebody's drinking at a wedding and they run out between cars and someone's coming down that road, they're gonna hit them. And it's gonna be a bad thing, and it's gonna be a bad thing for the town, the restaurant, the families, and everything.
Can you give Sue your name and your address?
Mickey Labonte, 115 New Road in Newmarket.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else got any more comments? And then we'll discuss it and take action. Thanks. Any more discussion? Got a motion?
Move to close the public hearing.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any more discussion or is motion or?
Look, I'll make a motion to approve condition as we have discussed, but I think one of those conditions needs to be that they're required to go talk to the select board and address the parking issue on the road.
Okay, so there's that and then conditional approval for DOT.
Of course, that's the other one that I thought was already in there.
Is there a second? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good one.
Have a good night.
Can't make it work. Okay, then. You gonna switch that? Oh.
Is there a file on here?
I think you can. Yes.
Yes.
Go home and then hit the,
Folder?
you would know, if I'm on USB, and then
Yes.
Boxley.
Which one? Oh, Hopper, I'm sorry.
So that's all. Spot B.
Okay, okay, so the next item is,
I brought some for the audience. I don't have quite enough. I'm just gonna put them up here. Don't let anybody grab some. All right.
okay, the next item is subdivision design review, Derek Road, trustee, Olive Road Trust, map 205, lot 2, an extra tax map 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Map lot 11, lot 11, and map 19, lot 60. A subdivision design review prepared by Emmanuel Engineering and submitted by Copley Properties LLC, 94 Portsmouth Ave, Stratton, New Hampshire, on behalf of Derek Road, trustee of Olive Road Trust, 119 Piscasset Road, Newfields. The applicant proposes a 77-lot conservation subdivision. The property includes a large parcel in Newfields and 9 smaller parcels in Exeter, with a combined size of 169.8 acres, which was surveyed by James Barrett Associates, Inc. The property is in the residential agricultural district in Newfields. I just kind of want to people know how we're going to handle this tonight. We're going to hear from the applicant. Then I'm going to get comments from the planner's review. Glenn's reviewed it. Then we'll have planning board discussion, and then we'll open up a public hearing. You got to give your name and the address. Prior to that, I want to go through with everybody the planning process, because I think there's a lot of questions about, does this just happen like this? It doesn't just happen like this. So I'll let the applicant start, and then we'll hear from Glenn.
Bill, just real quick, this isn't a formal public hearing, we're just hearing from the public, correct?
It was
Because we're not taking jurisdiction on this at all.
This is noticed as a design review hearing, which is a non-binding preliminary discussion that can happen between applicants and the planning board. And so no decisions will occur from the planning board.
Right. But there's no formal public hearing either as part of, we're hearing from the public.
Correct.
As opposed to a public hearing.
Well,
Formal.
it's noticed as a public hearing.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
It's noticed as a public hearing.
Great.
But a public hearing that is taking place under the parameters of being a design review, not a formal application.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the public. For the record, my name is Bruce Scammon. I'm from Emmanuel Engineering and James Barrett Associates. I'm here tonight with Mr. Drew Goddard, he's the owner of Copley Properties. He is the proposed developer. A little history on this. I started working on this property in 2006. I came before this board and created this lot for one of the road's relatives, and have worked actively on this piece of property since 2015. At that point, Mrs. Rugg, Olive Rugg, was getting older. The family was concerned about what was going to happen with her passing, and there was a lot of concern with some of the property in Exeter and ownership, and they asked me to get a team together and get the survey done so that we could actually know where the property was. So we worked for 8 years. We hired Don Wilson, who's a well-known land surveyor with an expertise in research, because when you get into the Oakland Forest, there's a lot of unknown property lines and ownership. So we worked on trying to delineate some of the old woodlots that the Ruggs owned, and that other parcels were owned by the town of Exeter and other families that date back sometimes hundreds of years. We spent over 2 years working on the town line, which I don't know if we can do, or is it just?
You can make it.
With 2 hands.
A lot of fun.
So, yeah, it's a little too much. Get used to it by the end of the night. So this red line that runs across the property here is the town line between Exeter and Newfields. As some of you most likely know, Newfields has been many different names over the years. Originally it was part of Exeter, then it went to part of New Market, then it became South New Market, and then later on became Newfields. There have been several changes. I believe there's been 7 changes in the town line in the history of the town. This happens to be one of them. To have a change in the town line that comes from a vote of the legislature, and this helped us work on the location of the properties in Exeter and Newfields over the history of our project. I worked very diligently with the Rugg family. As many of you know, we worked hard to try to get this put into conservation for lots of reasons. That didn't come to fruition. So as the Rugg family tried to figure out what best to do, they started to reach out to different developers, and they went through quite a few, and they felt that Copley Properties was the one that could best or closest come to their dream of keeping as much open space as possible and trying to keep as many trails as possible. This is what we call a yield plan. This is not what we propose to do. So the town of Newfields requires that we prepare a plan that shows a yield of what you could do. Trying to meet the town zoning. This is a possibility. We haven't done full design. As the chairman said, this is a preliminary review, which is somewhat required to then go on to do a final plan. We have not done full design work of roads or drainage or even the layout of the lots. This is just a preliminary one. Since we prepared these plans back on July 1, so over a month ago, we've been out there, we've done test pits, we had the wetlands delineated, and so that is going to be going in when we go forward with a full design. So as they said, this is just a preliminary, so we do a yield plan, which is then followed by a conservation plan where you have smaller lots and more open space. And that's the plan, is to try to keep as much open space as possible. Right now, for this conservation plan, there is no development proposed in Exeter. That may not be the case in the end, but that's what we're proposing in our preliminary plan. This leaves it so that there's some open space in between lots, they're spread out, they're smaller. The yield plan led us to, if we just did it with a traditional subdivision, with 2 acre zoning and then the frontage, then we would have 70 lots. With creating a conservation lot, subdivision, you get density bonuses in the zoning ordinances. So we were looking at public access bonus of 5%. We were looking at view shed bonuses of 5%, which gives us a 10% density bonus. There's different ways of getting density bonuses, but the town says you can only get a maximum of 10. So for our preliminary presentation, we use those two as a proposed. So our 70 in our yield plan, as we show here, we were able to create 77 lots. One of the lots, our first lot, is going to be the Rugg family home, and where the Ruggs run their nursery business and landscaping business. So that will be a lot that comes out of the subdivision. And then there will be 76 additional lots out in the subdivisions. Right now, as we've been to the board at least 2 other times with preliminary hearings, when we were trying to make this into conservation, we have a single road access at Piscassic. That's something that we'd like the board to think about. Is that what you'd like or not like? We have the right to come through a easement that comes off Piscassic over here, so we could connect out here. But you want? Did I miss? Check. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is that possibility. If that's something we'd like to discuss with the board. If we're going to be trying to stay conservation-wise, we want to have as minimized pavement as much as possible. So the question is do you have this extra 1,000+ feet of road, or is it better to have less pavement? Additionally, there's the existing trails, the major trails we had delineated in, I want to say 2017 and 18. So it was quite a while ago. Since then, I know the Ruggs had tried to open it up and build some more trails. I'm sure some of the bikers out there would recognize, but we took the main trails coming up. So this is the cable line, the old telephone line from 1920, I believe it was. And then there was another trail that the Rugg family had put in. Mrs. Rugg, Olive Rugg, who's since passed away, always liked riding a bike out here. That's why they bought the main farm in the 1940s, and then bought some additional parcels down in Exeter in the 1970s, and then they bought the 2 generations later, bought one last parcel that's in Exeter just a year or 2 ago. So that's the makeup of lots. But Mrs. Rugg always liked riding a bike in the woods, so they started making some of the trails for Olive. So with that said, Mr. Goddard would like to try to put as many trails back as we work through this, try to maintain as many of the trails as possible. But we still have to have a subdivision pay for the ownership of the property and to try to move forward. We have, I think I said we've done test bits. We have 20 test bits. When we came before, we talked about needing 15 test pits. About 20% of the lots needed to have test pits. So we have 20 passing test pits that are out here. We don't have them on the plan tonight, but when we come back with a full design, we'll have those test pits on there. One of our questions for the board is how many test pits do we need to show so that everybody's comfortable with our yield plan. The road layout is an important piece, and whether we need to have 2 connections to Piscassic Road or not. I know that I just got Mr. Greenwood's letter, and there's some things that we'll have to manipulate lots and maybe change them. There's lots of land out in Exeter, so we can have roads that go out into Exeter, but this was just a preliminary initial thoughts. As it's similar to what we came through before. I think we added one little cul-de-sac here to put some additional lots. And I believe this loop and the cul-de-sac were new since we brought the last time to the board. As was discussed or shown in the letter, we have community septic systems. Or at least at this point, we're showing 3 community septic systems. That number probably will change, but how many, it'll depend on when we finish doing the test pits layout and how we want to set those on the overall lot. We are showing a public water supply well. Most likely will not be using a public water supply well in our discussions. We'll have individual wells or smaller combined wells for a few of the lots. But we're showing the possibilities of that we could do it this way. Drainage-wise, what I've been liking, or what I've been preferring to do for design is to do rain garden infiltration in the swales along the road so that we will have a continuous drainage system that runs along the road, because there's immediate treatment. We're not running it, we're not having ponds that are creating new places for mosquito. Viruses come out of our mosquito population and creating wetlands usually doesn't help us in the long run. By doing a rain garden system, we will be putting the water back into the groundwater. So there'll be treatment right there and putting it back in. We're not trying to run water long distances. A lot of times when we do that, we have erosion issues and flooding issues. But if we can treat it right at the edge of the pavement, we end up with better treatment. So that's the proposal, is that'll be right in the town right away. It'll be grass swales. You won't even know what it looks like, what's happening, but it'll be below the grass swale. If you want to see one of those, I encourage you to go to 118 Portsmouth Avenue. That's where our office is, Millbrook Office Park. As you drive down the road, the treatment system on the left side of the road is a biotreatment swale. And so the main driveway in is done that way. So I designed that probably 5 years ago, maybe 7 years ago now, as a treatment system. I've also done it on a couple other subdivisions. So that's what I would prefer to do here. Because of the grades up and down, it just makes a lot more sense than interspersing ponds all over the site. As many of you know that ride out there or walk out there, that there's a lot of grade changes. And to start putting drainage structures and creating wetlands in those places doesn't make a lot of sense. I think that's the majority of what I wanted to talk about tonight. Drew, do you have anything else that you want to add to the?
Yeah, sure. Drew Goddard from Copley Properties. Excited to be here tonight to have that first discussion. As mentioned, this is very preliminary. What we see tonight is likely not exactly what will be shown in our next meeting, because we're absorbing a lot of the information and trying to figure out
what's going to be best and how to get a good path forward. I recognize the sensitive nature of this parcel. I think we take all our projects that we do, I think, we try to do our best. And we want to be able to develop a good community. But with this, knowing some of the background, we want to be able to harness a lot of the great attributes of what the land offers today to keep that. We don't want to remove that. We want to be able to, we're going to be actively reaching out to the biking community and the trail networks. A lot of times when we do a lot of these designs, we're looking at wetlands and open space, and let's make our roads and our house lots here. We're looking at topography, we're looking at the wetlands, and then we're looking at the trail network. We want to be able to preserve as many of the trails as possible. Of course, with putting roads in and houses in, 100% saving is just not realistic. But what we want to be able to do is still enhance that, create new trails, more trails. I think it's important to have a trailhead so people park, to get the access to those trails to be easier for people. So I don't want this project, whether it's me or it was going to be somebody else, that decision was made, and we're going down that path, and I hope I can be responsible and do it in a respectful manner, and trying to enhance the ability for all to be able to enjoy that landing. Other than some of the abutters that have direct access, but having adequate parking for people to be able to access those trails and being able to get on those trails and go down to downtown Exeter, whether you want to bike or walk or take your dog out there. We really want to harness that and have that as a great attribute of the whole subdivision. Also, we've got a lot of planning of, what are we going to be building up there? What are the houses that we're going to be building up there? What's this community going to look like? I feel like this would be something similar to a subdivision that we're working on in planning phases in Stratham right now. We're asking for about 50 homes on 100 acres. Bruce is working with me on that project as well. Cluster subdivision, similar to a conservation subdivisions where you start with the yield and then you get density bonuses. I'm trying to partner with Stratham to get the maximum density bonuses allowed. Because in Stratham, the density bonuses are guaranteed. But for myself, with the maximum density, we're able to partner and do something different and better. And what we're doing in Stratham, we're going to be building homes of different sizes for different price points, ranging from 1,500 square feet to probably 5,000 square feet. We've designed it so we cluster these homes together, so it feels more like a community. There's going to be younger people with older people, vice versa. It could be a couple generations that we're hitting different price points for different needs. Unfortunately, development is very expensive, and that's why you see the majority of all projects that are being done out here, they're very expensive. They're bigger homes, multi-million, million plus. So I think as a developer, we're not maximizing our profits necessarily doing a project like that. But I also think that it's what's best for these communities, and it's what the communities need. It's just they don't all need $1.5 to $2 million homes. But that's that partnership that I would be asking for from the town of Newfields as well. That's the conversations that we're having in Stratham. And there's going to be we can partner together to create something that's unique, that you don't see happening across the state in most of these subdivisions. So I'd be able to, there's going to be over 24 homes that are going to be under 1,800 square feet in Stratham. And I feel that other than just keeping the trails alive and creating more connection, but trying to offer the product that we're going to be trying to offer for the community, I hope that it can be successful and we can be a good partner.
Good, thanks. Glenn, do you want to comment?
Sure. I'm going to read my comments, which is really intellectually stimulating. So I'm not going to read my first paragraph, which is that's just telling the board what we're doing and how we go about doing it tonight, you're all aware of that. So I looked at this in two ways. I wanted to just give some comments to the board regarding the yield plan, which is really important. And from my perspective, the yield plan needs more work, so I would hope that the board would consider those comments. But I have this to say about the yield plan. That the plan proposes a lot layout based upon town zoning ordinance to determine the number of lots allowed for a conservation subdivision. For the most part, the layout complies with the town's requirements. Lots have the required frontage and meet the required lot size. But the guidelines for a yield plan found in the zoning ordinance also require that lots must be verifiable as reasonable under conventional subdivision. And I'm unconvinced by the information supplied that all of the lots are properly sized to account for steep slopes, those that are over 25% according to our ordinance. And there are steep slopes located in portions of this very large lot. And so I'm suggesting better information is provided to ensure the buildability of the lots as we're being provided to us now. The cul-de-sac presently proposes 7 lots, and the subdivision regulations limit the cul-de-sac to 6 lots. I don't think that they will have much difficulty fixing that issue, but it should be fixed, so I'm sure that they'll do that. And my final comment is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of stormwater management information provided, and I think that Bruce did a very good job of describing how he plans to do that element of this plan. And it is very different than the stormwater management plans I generally see for subdivisions that are this large. And in those subdivisions, they usually do use detention and retention basins, and those basins are square footage eaters because they are required. And I believe that that would cut down on the number of lots that they were proposing. But he is proposing a different, and from my perspective, a more sophisticated way of doing stormwater management. So I would encourage the board to keep an open mind as to the ability of what he's proposing, if he can show us through his engineering standards, because we will have this reviewed by a consulting engineer. I think it's a good way of doing this, and would be something different from what Newfields has looked at before. Then I segue over to the conservation subdivision plan itself. And so my comments are as follows. It would be helpful if if one graph on the plan would show the density formula that's outlined specifically in 11.7 of our conservation subdivision ordinance. It talks about density, baseline density, so that everybody could be comfortable that the information showed matches how our ordinance describes it. You'll have no problem doing that. The plan is predicated upon a road network that is presently disallowed by the ordinance. In section 11.15A, the ordinance requires that a perimeter buffer of 75 feet encircle the property. And in that section, 11.15A, there are 2 statements that conflict with the present design. One says that the 75-foot perimeter buffer is not allowed to be incorporated into individual lot configurations, and it has been here, so they would have to reconfigure lots along the perimeter, not on the base, and not on the southern side of the development, but on the eastern and western sides, and maybe a little bit on the northern side. And the second is that the ordinance allows the access road for the development to cross the buffer, but it doesn't allow it to travel through the buffer parallel to the property line. And this proposal does have that happen on the western side of the property. So now we have to change in order to comply with the ordinance. Section 11.24.4 requires a set aside of open space for actual recreational facilities. I loved hearing about additional trails being developed. This part of the ordinance does speak a little bit beyond trails to the significance of perhaps having some actual parklands with some recreational facilities that you'd find in typical sort of school-age kid parks. So that's a section I'd like you to look at so that you're aware of what the ordinance says. The plan proposes 3 large community septic systems. Bruce spoke to this a little bit. The board needs to determine if enough information has been provided to support these systems, understanding that this is design review and not a formal application. I'm really just highlighting the fact that this is also different because in New Hampshire, we really hold firm to having our own wells and our own septic systems on every single lot in conservation subdivision developments. That really isn't the way that it happens, so being cognizant of that early on and making that part of the discussion, I think, is important. And then said how is water being developed, because somehow I looked at that plan and did not see your community well, which just shows I'm getting older and feeble. So I will make sure not to do that kind of thing the next time I see it. The proposal will require 3 fire protection cisterns under the present regulations, and those cisterns would have to be designed and then located appropriately in cooperation with the fire department. So Bruce is really adept at working with local fire departments, so I have no issue that he'll look into that. My issue number 7 is, are there still outstanding ownership conflicts with this parcel? It doesn't make any difference to the design review phase, but if those ownership issues that I've heard with only through hearsay exist in that southern area, those really have to be hammered out, because formal notification of the butters, if there's some sort of cloud going on and we're not sure who owns what, that really will bog down a formal application process. So, Don Wilson is the best. He's been doing it a very long time. So hearing that that's the kind of person that you've engaged is really a positive thing. The right-of-way widths, this is getting into the weeds. I'm not comfortable with 1 to 200 foot scales simply because my engineering scale doesn't have that. So I'm doubling everything and making a mess of my own head. Just know that the numbers I'm giving you here is what I'm pretty sure you already know you have to meet, but I wanted to make sure that it was set. And those are my comments.
Okay. There's a lot getting discussed here. I think probably a lot is really confused about what goes on here. So I just kind of wanted to kind of run you through the process of, what this board goes through to get out the other end. If you want, you can go to the town website, you can look at our zoning ordinance, I think it's 80-some odd pages. This also brings in our subdivision regulations. Like everybody's saying here, this is preliminary. There's a lot of engineering that has to get done. We heard about the slopes, wetlands. They have to go through the regs. At some point, when we feel we've got enough engineered drawings, we will take jurisdiction of those drawings and the design reports, the drainage reports, and then that's when we start looking, getting down into details. If you go through the regulations, you're going to see the town has very strong drainage regulations and stormwater. Glenn mentioned fire protection. They're going to have to deal with DES on a substantial number of things, septics, wetlands. This is going to require AOT, which is going to bring in a lot of work for you guys to do. It's going to require you to designate all the wetlands, steep slopes like Glenn mentioned. It's going to probably go to Concom for their comment. I think this is going to have to go to Local Rivers Advisory Committee because it's within the quarter mile. We look at this, we comment on it, and then I can assure you it goes out to the Rockingham County Conservation District. And they look at it in minutia. They really look at this. So they see how it complies with our regulations. DES is going to be doing a lot of looking at, especially because it's an alteration of terrain permit. And what alteration of terrain permit is when you disturb over 100,000 square feet, it kicks in a very high level of review by DES. I think some of the things we'll look at in our ordinance are cost impacts in the town. We know this is probably based on some numbers that have been thrown out there, probably we're talking about a 13% increase in population if it ends up being a 77. That's just my rough calculation. That's something this board will discuss. There's mechanisms for us called scattered and premature. Would that kick in here, Bud?
Yes, we have a section in the ordinance that addresses scattered and premature possibility.
Yeah, which means we could say you gotta phase this in over a certain amount of time. The other thing, like we talked about, I want to, in my questions, the board is asking, like, how do we handle the Exeter piece? Does this how can we approve something? We have to approve something before they can approve it, or?
You can take it, it can be done individually between the two towns, because they absolutely both have approval of it. Now, the way they're proposing initially here is that all of the development will actually take place in Newfields, which means Exeter will have an easy job reviewing. If the application of our ordinances mean that they have to do some sort of residential development in Exeter, that makes the process more difficult and more timely. But it really is just a time issue. I say that pretty nonchalant because it's not my money. It's your money being spent on time, not mine. But it is a time issue. It's not something that is a failing issue for a developer.
But to go back to the yield plan, for us to say, Exeter's gonna have to approve that, how many lots are in Exeter, that they're buildable in Exeter, right? Before we add that onto our yield plan.
That
So
is correct.
It's gonna go
There's
through.
a state law that directs planning boards that if development in a town is contingent upon land that exists in another town, then you have to notify the other town and say, look, this development is happening. Is the land in Exeter zoned appropriately to allow this to happen? And are there regulations in Exeter that would prohibit this from happening? If there are, then we can apply those. But if there aren't, then there isn't an issue. But there is a statute a state law that helps planning boards understand what the responsibilities are when a municipal boundary bisects a property.
So I'm just gonna, so those are my comments, they have to meet zoning regulations, they have to meet our stormwater subdivision regulations, they have to meet DES regulations, they're gonna have to apply to DOT for access off of 87. So there's a lot of oversight going on, that's gonna be going on. You can probably come and enjoy yourself for the next few months here, maybe, or listening to it. So I'm going to open it up to questions from the board. I got some comments. Anybody else got anything to say, or Mike?
Yeah, there are a couple obvious lots, 13 and 31. I don't know how you get to it.
Which one are you on, the conventional?
Yes. 13 and 31, looks like you go across wetlands to get to the house. But more importantly is one's comment, I think it was number, talking about on previous plan that we've seen where the topography was shown, there are some real challenges. And it's impossible to see that on what we're given. But I recall going through and checking 6, 8, 10 lots that just didn't appear that they could be done. But I think that's real important that we get that.
So what I heard you say, just sorry, is that you want to look for topo and so everything on the yield plan is what I think I heard.
Yeah, on the yield plan, because these have to be buildable lots to be included in the yield. And when it's all laid out like this, it looks pretty good. The reality is, and it's kind of messy back there. And I don't know if all those lots are possible.
Anybody else?
I have a comment. I think it relates to maybe some further clarification from you, Glenn, that it looks like you have, maybe my best guess, 23 lots that are in the yield plan at Exeter. So the magnitude of the Exeter's commitment to the plan as a regulation review, it would seem like it'd be a smart strategy for us to be talking about that. Because if we're working from the yield plan backwards to determine what's going to be the conservation plan, that's a pretty significant number of the lots. This is really not against the Exeter plan. So if Exeter's not supporting that regulation, we need to know that.
Just so everybody knows, we have turned an exact application to the town of Exeter. And we will be going to Exeter to go through the exact same process that we're doing here. So that they will be seeing everything.
Great.
And we plan to do that through the approval process also. So it's not just one-sided, by any stretch of the imagination.
Along those lines, have the questions of the ownership of those Exeter parcels been formally adjudicated and finalized, or is it still an open question between the owners and the town of Exeter as to the ownership and condition of those properties?
To my knowledge, and I'm not an attorney or a land surveyor. Just to
But
make
you're
sure.
still a good guy.
There is still concern about that. There's about 6.8 acres along the southern stretch of the property in Exeter that is of concern. There was a subdivision. I don't know, I can go into details, as much detail.
No, I just need to, again, I've made inquiries to Exeter, they don't want to talk about it, which I presume it's because it's unresolved, but I'm asking you, has it been resolved? It sounds like the answer is no.
The answer is no. Absolutely.
And that 6.8 acres is, other house is located on that conservation yield plan, the yield plan rather, today?
Correct. We have a boundary plan that shows the ownership of the road parcel.
Yes.
But
I'm just asking,
to that line,
there are
that's what we-
houses, there are lots on the yield plan in that 6.8.
There's a sliver of those lots.
Yes.
If you want me to.
I can look at it, just yes.
Or why don't I go to this screen and show everyone, no question. So, in Exeter, there was a subdivision that was done, it's slipping my brain, the large subdivision that's just to the south of us.
Forest Ridge.
What was it?
Forest Ridge.
Forest Ridge. So Forest Ridge, when they did that, they gave a strip of land as part of their mitigation with the state of New Hampshire and town of Exeter. And that strip runs right along here. It's about between 100, about 100 feet in. In places it's probably only 40 to 50. So it's just this back strip that runs along these lots. These lots are probably 400 plus feet deep. So it's,
So about 12 little lots. There's
well,
12
these are 2 acre
lots.
lots. If you got rid of 6 acres, plus or minus, you get rid of maybe 3 lots. You know, it's not a major portion of the lots by any stretch.
Just
of the
as
imagination.
Wait a minute, let me jump in here. So it's my understanding that there's 7 lots that exist on the Exeter's portion of the property. And that one of the critical problems is that Exeter is claiming ownership to a variety of the lots that actually border Newfields. And while the Ruggs actually own property at the southern end of the development, the access to it actually goes to land that is currently contested by Exeter. Therefore, go look at the Exeter tax maps. It's very clear. There's 7 parcels there. The 2 that are in the Rugg name are actually on the southern end of that, and that everything between those 2 parcels that are running along the bottom edge, in between the Newfields line, is currently owned by Exeter?
Exeter has claimed all of this land for many years. That was why I got involved in 2006, working with the Ruggs, Ruggs had multiple parcels out in Exeter. They paid taxes on it, you know, for decades. And there was a 20-acre parcel, and there was a new 5-acre parcel that they just purchased. And on top of that, there was the additional plus or minus 25 acres. So there was 50 acres out here. The town of Exeter has this cut up in many ways. Part of that comes back by getting...
Here's the question. Has ownership of any of those parcels actually been transferred from Exeter to the developers here? They're currently still in the name of Exeter, is my understanding.
And Exeter doesn't have a warranty deed on any, or any of it except for the 6.8 acres on the bottom.
Currently, per the town of Exeter, and I assume that this is the issue that is still pending, and that Exeter is still claiming ownership to those properties. Is that correct?
It shows up on the tax map that way. I'm not going to say that they claim ownership because that's, I've been in a lot of meetings.
No. My point here is, unless and until we receive information that indicates that those are no longer claimed by the town of Exeter in any way, shape, or form, I just don't see how we ever can take jurisdiction of this because of that problem. I'm making it clear for you in terms of this, because coming back here and having us talk about this again without that resolved, to me is wasting your time and is wasting our time.
And that's why we are going to Exeter.
I understand.
And we're trying to work through that.
Okay.
Okay, so the road to the right, I mean, I can't, it says it's an easement. Can they, that's, it's not a public right of way. Can an easement be considered a public right of way? I mean, it's.
So you're talking about
This road right there, right, it says it's an easement, it's not a public right of way.
Well, it wouldn't be a public right of way until it was given to the public. It's an easement for this parcel that they kept when they subdivided this lot, so that they could put in a road in the future. It's not a public right of way because it hasn't been given to the public.
But it would become a public right of way.
If that's where the town, it could be. It could, if that's what the town is going to require during this approval process.
You know, I know the wetlands you show are very preliminary.
Correct.
And, you know, before we do anything, we gotta get out there and map everything, get
We've
the
done that.
contours and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it bothers me that it seems like you're trying to strike all the wetlands with a roadway. I mean, right off the bat, coming in, you know, and that's a prime wetland, which, you know, is going to have to look at extensively. Why, you know, why are you going right through a wetland? You know, I don't think DES is going to allow it.
This was just a yield plan. It wasn't.
But they have, the Bruce, they have removable lots. So, you know, then down below, you keep on going right through wetlands where I feel you couldn't get permit, you should be going around them. That's what our ordinance says, to the most practical. I mean, you've got, and then I don't think you show here any reduction for hydrant B or, hydrant B soils, the 25% reduction in lot size, which is going to come out. You know, there's just a lot of information here that is needed. So what we've seen in the past from developers, and Bruce, I see you writing stuff down. You got to go to the ordinance and check off the boxes.
But I'm
just giving you my thoughts.
No, but I'd like to write down your thoughts because it's important. Going back and designing.
You know, before, we need to see that every lot in the conventional is developed. So you got to show 4,000, you got to show us the reduction for wetlands, you got to show us the 4,000 square foot septic reserve area, the setbacks for the septic from the wetlands, that a house could fit on that lot, you know, road grades. We probably need to be talking about sidewalks out there. I think we should be saying, yes, we need sidewalks out there. I think in the past, the only thing that we've allowed to deviate from doing conventional is saying you don't have to do all test pits. But I would want to see test pits. I know you found probably the best soils, and that's where you're doing it.
Sure.
I would want them spread around the whole site. And when you give us a layout, we'll tell you what we want. And, you know, that's what a conventional subdivision would have to go through. You know, you gotta put the recreation in on there, you gotta put space for the fire systems. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely.
And it's gonna,
Because it's
you're gonna lose a
preliminary.
lot of these lots. You're gonna-
So- Can I ask a question on what you just said? Is you're telling me that we need, on a yield plan, we need to completely design everything, including the roads, because I think that's what I heard, and sidewalks on a yield plan before we can then say it's designed enough for you to say it's a good yield?
Because you've gotta show us the grades. You have to show us the grades for the roads to say they're acceptable to
I'm
our
just thinking,
ordinance.
I'm not trying to argue, but I'm just thinking, if I was a developer, and I'm not Mr. Goddard, but if I take the time to design that, then I would just move forward and use all the land and do it as a traditional subdivision. Because if I pay to do that, there's no way that I'm gonna pay again to do it, conservation.
Well, we've gone through a few of these in town, and that's what ends up happening. That's what the ordinance says. You have to prove to us that each lot is developable.
But that's also why you get the 10% bonus, moving from conventional to conservation. It's to recognize that you're basically going through a two-step process.
And, you know, we have to listen, we have to pay attention. And you send this to RCCD, and they're gonna tell you the same thing.
Every town's different how they do it. And that's why I'm just confirming, because I want Mr. Goddard to hear what you're saying, so that he knows this might be the option where he ends up.
Well, if you engineer it, and then you can go for the bonus, but that's how we work through these, is, we just did it up on Old Lee, you know, the guy came in with 29 acres, started up with 11 lots, he left with 6, okay? And, you know, we've had a few of these, once the engineering's done, the lot size, the number of lots goes way down. You know, you mentioned yourself, grades, we know there's a lot of wetlands out there. And I think you gotta be really conscious that you don't go through wetlands with roads. So I think
it's important.
Unless you think.
Minimize that.
Minimize it, yeah. And
Okay,
we,
I just want to make sure
well, I just see, you've got the first entry road, you're going to a prime wetland, I don't think DES would be too keen on it. When you can just move it down to the side there. I mean, that's just one observation. You know, the other thing that I would, well, I guess, I think we need to get through the whole thing with conventional, because I have some issues with, you know, a group septic systems as far as where's the piping, who's responsible for repairing it in the future. I'm really not too keen on it. And I think the board needs to discuss, we require a 4,000 square foot reserve area. I think you gotta show us a reserve area comparable to the number of lots.
yield plan or on the conservation?
Well, the yield plan, you gotta show it on each lot. With the
Yes, that's
setbacks and where a house can go and all that.
But a house can be within the 4,000 square foot when you actually build it. When you actually design a home, you do.
Go to our septic.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Just know the septic ordinance.
Okay,
You gotta
sure.
do that. I don't think, you can't put a building because it's a reserve area for the septic system in future. Expand, you know, a replacement septic system.
I guess one comment I'll have is, you know, we work with a lot of towns and cities, like, we always start with yield plans, and everybody has different systems in place and what they like to see and how they like to see it. They need to be buildable lots, we understand that, but we never give road grades, we don't design the roads and the drainage
for a lot of different reasons. Because ultimately, the property out there is undulating, but it doesn't mean a road can't go through there, it just means that it would be an expensive road. A lot more fill, more plastic. So it's, a lot of times it is possible and plausible, it's just that it's not mostly feasible to build it. So we could show it, but as Bruce had mentioned, if we're gonna design, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on designing this neighborhood, we would just propose to build that neighborhood. But that's obviously not what we want to do. We want to be able to look at the regs, follow the regs, stay within the guardrails of the regs. But at the same time, we want, I feel, we want to look and feel the township, what are other cities and towns doing? There's more confidence, and I think we have to make sure that they're all buildable. We show septic locations, we a lot of times will show the house locations where the driveways come in. Sometimes some of these lots, conventional subdivisions, they can have shared driveways. So we show a lot of that information, but to go so far as to actually design the road, it seems an unnecessary hardship, which ultimately I think we would just stick with that. And I don't think that's what anybody in this room wants.
There's a great deal of space, probably between a fully formed plan and the reality of what that land looks like. You know, I know this is preliminary tonight, so we're just giving you some feedback. But when you think about whether something is buildable, what it's going to cost to build those roads, what the grades are, you have to put some plan together that is reasonable to say that is the right yield. And, you know, spending time on that land, it's very unlikely that that grid is a reasonable yield plan. You can spend time out there and convince me otherwise with engineering work, but that's not a practical yield plan for the land as it sits out there.
Might be an expensive road, but it can be possible. And, you know, obviously the roads might change and move a little bit, what the overlay, but that, you know, having the expensive roads, it's exactly what, you know, these communities don't need, because that's not going to develop affordable housing. You know, to create more affordable housing, we need to be able to build infrastructure as cheap as possible. We need to partner with communities and get better density. Because when you don't get as much density, you're dividing out all the upfront costs over fewer lots, and they're all going to be more expensive homes. So to be able to come up with a subdivision that's cost effective to build for the amount of homes with a maximum density, we're going to be able to create what everybody's asking for, is more affordability. And that's what people say, why don't we build more affordable homes? Well, there's reasons why I and other developers can't build affordable homes.
Anybody got any? I just want to echo what Michael was saying regarding the disputed land in Exeter. It's been a really hot topic for the past year plus. So it's not something that we're going to solve tonight, but that's a big one.
We recognize with our yield plan and what we're showing today is showing as a successful resolution to that matter. Obviously, if it's not successful, the yield plan and what we're showing is going to look different. But I know the Rub's actively working on resolution. But until there's a clear resolution, we understand that you know, things will look different if not successful.
Anybody else, before we open up the public hearing, anybody else got any comments?
Just out of curiosity, on the conventional plan, you have the dual entrances. And I don't recall the road out there, but, you know, frequently in this town, a lot of line curves, Piscasket is an undulating road. Have those been, would that second entrance actually be allowable by DOT? Do we know that? Or have you
It's
asked?
an
about-
existing driveway,
It's an existing driveway,
I believe.
but as a road.
Roads and driveways usually are very similar to what DOT asks for.
Okay.
You know, we haven't designed that yet, so it's.
You haven't
that was-
asked?
So what you might have to do is have a easement that remains on some of the road property and for clearing so that you can see further down the road.
Okay.
On Partridge Hill, both entrances, they made you slow down that turn lane too. So you're gonna, and this is 3 times the number of houses, so you probably need to put something in front of DOT soon.
We're at the infancy stages of
No, I
this,
understand.
And
Again, I'm only asking from our perspective, if we're gonna understand, you know, I can put something on a drawing, but whether it actually is achievable comes down, you know, that determines what the yield actually is here, so.
Absolutely. As we stated at the beginning, this was very close to what we came in when we were trying to do conservation on the whole thing. So we started there because that's where we've shown the board before. We are in the process of doing real design work and, you know, test pits and wetlands delineations. We thought it was important to come in here and start this conversation sooner versus later, so everybody knows where the process is going. As Mr. Goddard said earlier, this is not what it's going to look like in the end, and we just are here for as much information and to share as much information. That's why we brought extra copies for the public, so that people can understand what's possibly going on, and to start the process with the public, so we can hear what their thoughts are, and anything that anybody else wants us to be thinking about that we may not even know about yet. And that's why we're here, is complete information gathering so that we can do a better design in the future. So it's not that we think that this is at all what we're gonna be, a final design coming in here, showing you as a design. It's a sketch to start the conversation.
Okay, anybody else? Any other comments from the board? Okay, I guess we'll formally open the, do I need a motion to open it or?
No, it's not a formal hearing, so.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions or comments, you gotta give your name and your address. Go ahead.
My name is Tyler Renz. I'm a Newfields resident. I live in Stratham at 115 Stratham Heights Road. I'm a licensed professional civil engineer in 12 states, and I've done projects with the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority. This is not what they're looking for. I could tear this apart from an engineering perspective, but I need some time to review it. And I'm here as Tyler, a concerned citizen, not an engineer. This is one of the largest undeveloped tracts left in this area, and this is our only opportunity to make sure that we're left with something to enjoy in the area. Once this happens, there's no going back. And we had, I don't know, it's probably a 20-minute conversation about whether cars could park on the side of New Road or not. And compared to this, the impacts are pretty significant. And I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of that. And I think there are a lot of opportunities that this could go different ways. There's a lot of different avenues that can be taken to get most people what they want. And that's really all that I have to say.
Good, thanks. Anybody else?
Can we look forward to seeing you at further meetings?
Sure. Now that I can
Anybody else?
Tom Rogers, Ridge Road. I'm having heard one thing to address, and that's water supply. I know Partridge Hill, a number of towns in Partridge Hill have water problems from two wells. Our well is 640 feet deep. We had hydrofactory 3 gallons a minute. The pump is set over to the 500 feet. This piece of property is not far from me. And how is this going to be addressed, water supply for what, 70 some odd homes. I think there's something that's going to have to be considered.
DES has really extensive requirements, pages of them.
I hope they're good enough.
And when they get into these,
That's what I think.
I think community systems, it goes even further. I think what this board is important for this board to make sure if they go to these community systems that the town is not taking on any responsibility. It's probably going to be a homeowners association or something. But DES does have, very strict requirements to prove the water and all that stuff. Go to the DES website, you can read for days. Okay? Thanks. Anybody else?
Well, on that point, Bill, I mean.
Bill, can I just?
Yeah.
Good, go on.
When I asked about the community well, since I hadn't noticed it, I think you said you're going to step away from the community well.
Most likely.
And if that's the case, and they go to individual wells, there's no oversight over those.
Good. So that becomes the individual, if that's what they're going to do. But that also starts other implications with other setbacks and things too, so. Ma'am?
I'm in a butter, Stephanie Secor, I'm 135 Piscasset, so I'm on the northwest side of this property. We moved in 25 years ago-ish, longer maybe, before Partridge Hill, and I know what that did to our lake. And I too am concerned about water, but I'm concerned about not just my water, but the fact that when we went to hearing about trying to add this to the town forest, that our water expert for the town said, this is our aquifer. And I'm really worried about that. And I'm worried about that when it comes to putting houses on the terrain that I know very well is out there and having to get through ledge, which means blasting through ledge, which I really look forward to, but that will affect the aquifer. And that is my biggest concern. So getting around it by saying, oh, well, each individual well has to deal with DES, I think we all should be really worried.
Thanks. Sure.
Steve Tate, Lincoln Road. When the well I've had for 38 years and had no problem with starts failing, do I pay for it, or do the people who make millions of dollars pay for the upgrade?
I can't answer that.
It's important.
I can't, they'll be.
Because they're going to walk
it's
away,
something
and I'm going
maybe
to get stuck with the bill.
It's something maybe we need to make sure we look into.
Yeah.
We have the right to, so.
Because I don't want to end up having to pay a few $1,000s while they make a few $1 million. So, I've had no problems for 38 years.
Jen Marshall, another, 68 Bassett Lane, in the upper right-hand corner just there. We've had problems with our well already, and knowing that terrain very well, I'm not a biker, but me and my family, my 2 kids are out there all the time, so we're downstream from all of that rock. We should be fine from a well perspective, but we're already not. So just from what I'm hearing is that if we don't do the community well, then the individual wells will be on the ownership of the homeowner. Is that right? It won't be, to your point, it will be our responsibility if we have issues with water at that point.
Glenn, doesn't the DES at least require you to show yield upon well?
Not with the subdivision case. When you hire a well driller, there are reporting requirements to DES.
So how would we address these people's concerns about their wells, that they're not going to have problems in the future?
That is a really good question. If we step away from a community well, that's something we would have to address during the public process.
Which means what, have studies done or require them to do studies?
Perhaps have some sort of hydrogeologic study.
Good. I mean, it's great that you people bring this stuff up because it's helping us out.
A quick follow-up there. If I understood correctly, it sounds like the water conservation work was already done, I believe you said. I just wanted to see if that is the case, is it reflected in the conservation subdivision plan?
Couldn't quite hear you, I'm sorry. What's been done?
Had you said that the water conservation, that research had already been completed?
I didn't say that. I haven't done any water research or conservation.
Okay, I misunderstood.
The conservation stuff that we were working on was, I was working with the rugs, trying to get this into conservation so it wouldn't get developed. That's it.
I may be using
Somebody
the
else
wrong,
said,
I might be using the wrong terminology, wetlands, just the wetlands work.
for the wetlands delineation, we have done a wetlands delineation. We have surveyed, I believe, all of it at this point. So we just, that part of the process hasn't been put on the plan yet. So that's wetlands, that's surface water, not groundwater. The issues that I'm hearing is about groundwater and drinking water, which is different than the wetlands. And one thing I talked about was with the roads, what I've been doing on a lot of my subdivision is putting in infiltration trenches. So the water that in most subdivisions runs the ponds, the way it's traditionally done, doesn't. It goes into these trenches so that it can go back into groundwater after it's treated. And so that's what we're trying to do in our design is put more water back into the ground and then what traditional subdivisions do, which would then end up going from here, I would say it ends up in the Wiscasset River or the ice, which is Wiscasset. Which is, yeah, the widened part of it, Wiscasset. And it goes out to the Great Bay. So we're trying to retain more water than what's traditionally required in the way we do our designs.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I still want to know, after you do all your studies and give me all your insurances, when one well fails, who pays for it? I don't care about
I
the studies
can't-
or insurances, that means nothing to me.
Well, I think you're bringing up some good points, and as a board, we can require studies be done.
No, I want something in writing that says they're going to pay for my problem.
The board can discuss that, you know.
Because
I mean,
insurances, you're just going to give me insurances and then it's going to fail and say, well, sorry, we were wrong. I already know that.
Good, that would, quick comments.
Yeah, Nathan Woodsmith, 38 Oaklands Road. Just want to voice something that other people may be thinking here. I voted in favor of conservation when it came up to vote. I know there was a problem with the border that prevented that. That problem with the border is still there. Should we resolve the border issue? Is there any way of going back to that conservation? I know with the property between Newfields and Newmarket, the greenway up there had already been a plan, already been a proposed plan when that was turned into conservation. I just want us to address the fact that that may still be an option if all the parties would be agreeable to it. Thank you.
I think it comes down to funding, right? Where it's going to come from. So
I understand that, but, you know, from my understanding, the town voted for the funding, there was matching funding, there was matching funding.
Let me weigh into that because the town moving forward with the conservation was actually based in contingent upon grant money that was coming in. Grant money that, when we were informed that there is an unwilling seller, we basically told the grant agency, we have an unwilling seller. So those grants are not now available to us. So if the town wants to do that, this would have to come before the town for another vote. Yep.
Okay, anybody else, ma'am?
Amy Woodson, 38 Oakland Road. So living on Oakland right near there, it's a great way to get from Newfields down to 27, Exeter High School, all of that. Is there any way to look at the impact of adding all of these houses to the traffic that's going to occur on Oaklands, especially trying to get to the high school and everything down that way, because that would greatly increase our traffic down there.
We'll probably require a traffic study. DOT will probably require a traffic study. You know, when the first, where what is it called? The green space? Yeah. With the Greenway, you know, when that was going in, DOT, I think that was 110 units.
130.
130. DOT was requiring several, like, They wanted this intersection changed, they wanted the intersection of Oakland's changed, and I think they wanted the intersection of 87 and 125 changed. So when they go for their DOT permit, DOT will look at that. We need to probably have a traffic study done to look at, just what you're saying, the impact of Oakland. And that would get done, you know, at some point when we know what the exact numbers going to be. But, you know, this traffic study, we just about most developed some type of impact strategy on that. Anybody else got any more comments?
Can I ask one, just maybe comment one thing on Michael's, and Mike, you might be correcting me on this, but the planning board, this is your question, the planning board doesn't bring projects, we hear projects, so there's nothing that would prohibit somebody, if there was a willing party trying to do something, it's a complex process, maybe impractical at this point, but there's nothing that this board would be doing in any way to stop that kind of conversation. So that, and feel free to correct me in any way, but that's, we're responding to what is the current proposed plan, so a new plan can be proposed.
Thank you for the clarification. I'm mostly aware of that. I was just using the plug for those two.
I thought you were looking for somebody with $5 million in the deal's done, right? Anybody else got any more comments?
Well, this is just sort of
Okay, go ahead. Somebody behind you, go ahead.
I already introduced myself, but just sort of piggybacking on the same piece. I am not privy to any information we ever got to the point where donations were solicited. If this is about money, perhaps, I'm just saying this out loud, that perhaps there's still an option for people to come up with enough money and maybe they even get it back at some point and are made whole. But it's just about money, so.
I'd just like to say, it's really up to the property owner to make that decision. I mean, as everyone's aware, it's not up to the board. You know, the town supported it, and for whatever reasons, they decided not to go ahead with it, or you couldn't go ahead with it, or whatever, so it's really...
You know, about 10 years ago, out on Old Lee Road, I think Viano's property, we probably had 10 meetings on that. We were down to almost the final approval, and the number of lots got reduced down substantially. And then at last moment, I think it was Fish and Game came in with the money.
Yeah.
So, and I was involved way back when this gas agreement was started. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the background to come up with the money, but people had to take the initiative to make it happen. It's not going to happen without initiative. So that's it. Now, how about
Jenny Bishop, from Meadow. Earlier in the meeting, I think Jeff, it was you that said that if this moves forward, there would be studies done on the impact of the town as a whole, fire, police. What is the process to study the impact on schools?
Same thing. It would, you know, I know you came up with numbers for the conservation, you know, that would go into, we would look at the impact on the school. You know there's impact fees, right? So that's going to get, that would be part of it.
No, I wasn't talking about the impact fees, I'm talking about student population impact and potential expansion of the school and staff and all that.
That would come in. We probably have it.
What part of the process is that?
I think when we start getting down to what's the actual number, right? I know you gave some, I was just looking at it the other day, you know, 2.46 people per housing unit was from somewhere. That's what was used on, you know, if you take 2.46 times 100, that's 77. I think I calculated that increases our population by 13%, which is, I think, substantial. So that's going to have to start getting addressed at some point. Okay? I can't give you a number, Jay.
No, I didn't think of it. I wanted to understand the process more.
Okay. Anybody else? Sir?
Yeah, so just to kind of, Kevin Ryan, live on Meadow as well. Just kind of reiterate what Jenny said. Just the impact fees, so, you know, school is one, fire, as, you know, you work through the final design here, is that kind of factor into the final negotiations with the developer? And like the well situation, you know, bonding, so there's, you know, residents who may be impacted by the addition of their wells, that kind of stuff. So
I think that's something we have to look into, but, you know, I'm sure this isn't the only time that discussion about my well, has come up, so maybe we can find something.
As far as the impact fees, a study's done and how these different departments are impacted is given a number, and when the person buys the lot, they pay additional monies to impact fees to different departments. Is that right?
Yes.
Anybody else? Anyone? The patient man in the blue shirt. Go ahead.
To Fred Rosa, 60 Bassett Lane, one of the abutting landowners. First, my sense of the town's vote in favor of the town forest was that a significant driver in the final outcome was a desire to maintain as much as we could the rural character of Newfields. My first question is essentially, clearly you're going to have to apply a lot of different rules and standards and guidelines. Is there a place in any of that for the planning board taking into account as one of many factors that fundamentally, I think if there was a way to take a referendum right now in some magic fashion, there would be a very strong vote in favor of not adding a huge number of new homes.
What we have to rely on is what's allowed in the zone. And then the subdivision regulations gives more details about the subdivision, but the zoning, which we as a board have to live with, is, you know, check the boxes. That's where we're at, you know.
Yeah, on that point, there's a process and there are rules. And one of the things that people have to understand is if they are following the rules, they're allowed to do with that property, if they own it, what they want to do with the property. As much as 100% of the town can vote and say, we don't want that, if they are following the rules and following the process, they're allowed to do that. So I'm just want to make sure everyone's clear, as much as there may be a will of the town, it's the landowner has rights here, and that's what we're trying to basically work through. Following the process, following the rules on the books that the town established, but at the same time allowing people to do with their property what they can do under those rules. So to your point, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that there was an overwhelming vote to do that. It doesn't change, that doesn't come into our calculus. Matter of fact, it's not allowed to. We're not allowed to take that into account in the calculus. I guess is the point I'm getting to.
I think, you know.
Just so everyone has the expectation, the proper expectation.
I've been on the planning board here, I think for 24 years or something. I was on a couple of others. I think one of the reasons why people like to live in Newfields is because the developments that go in. You live on Bassett, there was uproar 30 years ago when I lived up on Wisconsin at one point. But I think what we've embedded in our zoning over the years is to make it keep the character as rural as it can. You know, we have very strong stormwater regulations. It's not a town that you can just come in and slap a development. Okay, I think, you know, you have to appreciate that. You can just drive around town and look, and that's why people like to live here. I think you know, it was, we did a lot. When I first came on the board, that's when we put the conservation subdivision in, because we saw a need for that, and that's become very popular.
And so to your point, the conservation subdivision, what that does is it allows you to take a plot of land, such as this, prove you can get 70 houses in there, and then it allows them to compact those houses and keep open space with that. So that may be the ultimate goal, to help preserve that open space. And this process is a bit onerous on the landowner, because they need to prove that number. They need to prove they can develop 70 houses before they switch over to the conservation subdivision. So are we aware of that? Sure. Would we rather have that? Sure. It's not ultimately up to us to make that decision which way it goes, because we got to play by the rules.
Understood, that your answer certainly doesn't surprise me, but it is a theme that's out there that I feel is worthy of noting. The other is a more straightforward process question. Will there come a point in this process where fundamentally the developer has essentially finalized their plan? You've taken ownership of it and you're going to make a decision. Will the public, will the residents have an opportunity to see that complete proposal and offer any thoughts or comments before the decision is taken?
Most of it. And that was a question I wanted to ask Glenn was, this is not going to be a continued, right? When we
Design review and this evening.
So when we reach a point where they give us a package, they will need to notify everybody again, and we'll start, public hearing, with every meeting, we'll open up, just like this, public hearing for comments from the public. You can come in and see the presentations. I kind of urge you to, scan through the zoning. I mean, it's 78 pages, but 30 of it has to do with cell towers. You can see but take a look at it. I think you'll, appreciate, how much is in there, and why it's. Any other question?
Jenny Wilson, 64 Bassett. I was curious as to, does Derek still own the land and he's working with the developer to get the amount of money and then they're going to settle his deal, or is he signed something off and the developer now owns it? Because I know at the Exeter Select Board, maybe they said whoever inherits the problem has to deal with the problem of the dispute, whether it's Derek before he does it or the developer. Do we know where this stands?
No, this is just, somebody can bring in an application without owning the land. A developer like he's doing, I don't know if he owns it or not, but he's here.
If he doesn't own the land, he does have to have the approval of the owner.
Of the owner,
yeah.
Correct, before we'd ever take jurisdiction.
That's why it says to Tara, right?
Yeah, I know his name's on it, that's why.
But as far as tonight, this is just a discussion, so I can come in on proposal for your land. Because it doesn't.
Okay, any more?
Jim Whitman, Peak Drive. Just a quick question. The yield plan straddles both Newfields and Exeter. Maybe 20-some properties that are currently in Exeter or partially in Exeter on that plan. But the conservation plan is entirely in Newfields. Is that okay? Does it have to be apportioned? So why does Newfields bear the entire burden?
I think that's something the board has to discuss. I personally feel some should go into Exeter. That's mine. And I think once we see more technical information, that's what the board would discuss. Because I know when we first brought this up, that's what I heard from 4 or 5 people in the public was, why is all the conservation land going to be in Exeter and all the houses going to be in Newfields? So I think that's something this board has to look at. We will look at it.
But we thank you for working really hard on our behalf.
It's a lot of fun. We haven't started yet. We've been, as you know, we've been heckled and roared at in the past. I just really appreciate people being civilized.
Whatever are you referring to?
Any more questions? No.
Just, is there any consideration to endangered species, anything like that? Or
What? Oh, that's
That'll come up, AOT, if and when they apply for AOT, that's when DES and Fish and Game specifically starts to look at that specific issue.
And how do we know about that? Or
do we know anything about that?
No, how does the public get to hear what's going on?
They'll be presenting to us all that information that will come before the board. There'll be copies available. A lot of that stuff, if you go to the DDS one-stop website, you can go look at all these permits anyways.
And there's like a lot of lady slippers out there that I think are still endangered. I'm not really sure.
There's a variety of species that have been associated in and around this area. I don't know whether they've specifically been identified on this property, but it's both fauna and as well as species. You know, we're certainly not privy to any specific studies on this. That's gonna have to be driven by the landowner directly, but we'll be informed as we go through the process.
Anybody else? Sir?
One way I discussed it with, you show one road in and one road out. That's gonna put a lot of traffic right next to my house. I'm talking 100+ cars a day coming out of there. I'm hoping that we can at least try to get multiple roads into this. And all the other developments around here have multiple businesses, except for this one right here. So, it's close, it's pretty close to my line right now. I mean, so I'd like to see something, at least take that into consideration.
Yeah, and then there's buffers, like Glenn had mentioned, buffers.
Yeah, well, we get a 300-foot straightaway right there, so that's a nice driveway for kids.
Good, I mean, good, great comments. This is what it's all about. Okay, I believe, public talk about it. Anybody else? Okay, now I'll close this public hearing. Everybody else set? There must be something on Better TV. Now, we just got some administrative stuff to do. What? We all set? I just, you guys can leave if you want to hang
Since I sent that email, because she was traveling.
Whatever evening is on your now, it's getting kind of.
Are you kidding me? It's what? It wasn't recorded?
Oh, God, I was smiling all night, too.
It wasn't recorded. Wait, it didn't stream.
I went over there, no. It was recorded.
It recorded, it didn't stream.
It didn't stream. Well, I just went over there to make sure it was recorded. I didn't check to stream it, so we have it, a copy of it. Let's be clear.
That's a big difference.
So, do you have the CIP? Is that one of the? So, I was looking through documents, and our CIP is way out of date.
USB. It's labeled CIP. Oh, no.
Hey. There you go.
There you go, thanks. So it was 2000, these have to be updated every 6 years, correct?
No, CIPs are actually supposed to be updated every year.
Yeah.
But each year, it's a 6-year program.
Yeah. So.
That's insanity of it all, right? How can you do a CIP every year?
Well, a town the size of Newfield.
No, a city, yes.
Correct.
So I just think we need to, we started working on this last year, right?
Yeah.
You were gathering information. We talked last month about sidewalks and the school. How would we go about doing this? Get RPC?
Last year, I committed to doing it. So I would just do it.
Yay!
So it needs to be, I'm currently working on 2 other community CIPs.
I need a motion for that?
But I will,
No.
no, it's something I told you I would do, so I will do that. And we actually need to have it in place relatively soon, so I will work on it. So I will need to talk with Mike and Bill about this, so.
So let's put it on an agenda item for every meeting, and Glenn will give us an update.
Yep. Groovy.
You have my phone number and email.
Anytime
you want to talk.
I have both. And you always answer my call, so.
It says Glenn, how can I not?
The other thing was, we started talking about updating the zoning map. But I don't think we got that.
No, you haven't. And that's something you really want to talk with the planning commission about.
Okay, because, I mean, we're still showing the meadows as these little funny cul-de-sacs.
Yeah,
We haven't had
you-
anything since.
Yeah, you have to work with the planning commission on that.
So,
And they're likely, well, I can't talk about it anymore. But I would ask them to do it for free, because you're dues paying members, and you don't really ask for a lot from them.
okay.
So call Robert Prime, and Prime, and he spells it Prune, so it's Pryune, but it's pronounced Prime. And he's the GIS program director over there, and he's responsible for mapping, and he will work on it.
Okay, I'll call him tomorrow.
Yeah, and look at, they've done updates to the zoning map for the town of Newfields. And they look at the zoning ordinance to do that. So check what they have been, there's a zoning layer online for Newfields on their website right now.
Yeah, I looked at the sidewalk plan and it had more information than our zoning map.
So
It's there.
start from there as the starting point to work with Robert.
I mean, do we expect a whole lot of changes on our zoning?
Well, it's just the streets.
Yeah,
The streets are, the deer trees,
Yeah.
deer trees is shown as little colors.
No, I get it. But I mean, outside of just updating the roads,
We haven't.
there's not a whole lot of zoning changes that we're contemplating.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
I think one of the things we thought we needed was setbacks, the 150, the 100-foot setbacks from the rivers.
They did a layer they need a layer for every community that shows both if there is a local shoreline protection act and what the state's requirements in the state shoreline act. It's called the Water Quality Protection Act or whatever.
Yep.
But, so they have one of those on the website as well. Now, I don't think they have anything. They'll have a wetlands map for the town based on the National Wetlands Inventory, but it won't have any local setback shown on it. If you could, we could work with them to do that. That would be something that they would have to do.
I don't know if that's necessary, because if you're gonna develop something like we're telling these folks, you gotta go delineate it anyway. So it kind of might give them pause. Okay. July meeting.
I forgot to put them.
What?
Did you read them already? I forgot them.
I read it.
All right.
Oh, maybe you can get a motion right now from people.
Is there,
I'll move them as written.
is there a second? Or do you
Apparently not.
Or do you want to wait till next month?
What?
No, let's wait till next month.
Wait till next month.
Great. I rescind my motion.
What is it, Dave Wood? Let's not go there.
Get the date.
Let that dry. Here's your pen. Don't forget the pen. Okay, anybody got anything else? Motion to adjourn. It's 9:12. That wasn't bad. No. All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Good.